Welcome back. We've had a string of some pretty crummy weather here in Minnesota. It's been this drizzly, cold, rainy mess. We're going on 4 days now. It's supposed to keep going through tomorrow, but Wednesday is supposed to be our weather window. It's supposed to be nice and warm and sunny. So I'm hoping that my heavy clay soil is going to dry out enough to where we can do a big swing of planting. So that is my goal, and I kind of have to decide now or never because we have to cut up potatoes for planting several days in advance. So we're just gonna go for it. So I'm gonna bring you over to where I have my seed potatoes stored so we can get those all prepped to hopefully plant in 2 days. If we can plant the potatoes, we'll get some carrot seed down and maybe even my cold weather plants like my broccoli and Brussels sprouts and all of those. So let's go do it. Okay, we've made it to our little dry cabin. It's kind of a mess. This is where the overflow of our stuff has gone, and it's dueling as our woodworking shop. So I was thinking this might be a good little corner for me to set up my seed potatoes. So here is what I have for this season. I have some new stuff and some old stuff or things I've been doing for a long time. So this first one that I have, this is the Magic Molly fingerling potato. So they're a little bit smaller. I thought these would be just kind of fun. I only got a pound of those. But my tried and true that I've been growing for, gosh, maybe 8 or 9 years by now is the red chieftain potato. These are awesome. They store really well. We're often eating these at least through February, sometimes later. And I got 2.5 pound bags, so we're going for 5 pounds. And while I thought this would be an awesome spot for the seed potatoes, I'm seeing all sorts of mouse poop everywhere. So that means that I'm not all that excited about cutting my potatoes and leaving them out fresh with mice crawling around. The cats can't get in here because the door is closed. So I think what we're gonna do is cut them here and then I'll move into the shop. I don't necessarily want to bring them in the cabin because it's warm in the cabin. So these are cool tubers and they're going into the cool ground. So I think that's what we'll do. We're just gonna roll with the punches. So what we're gonna be doing now is an essential step for planting potatoes. You could just plant this whole potato if you wanted to, but it's ultimately gonna be pretty wasteful. You can get so many more potatoes out of this potato if you cut it up. Because if we look at it, you can see that there's lots of little sprouts, or what we call these are eyes. And so every time there's an eye, that's where growth is going to come up. And really, you only need 2 eyes to create a potato plant. And so we're going to cut this up and create a lot of plants out of this one potato. Sorry the lighting isn't awesome in this little cabin, but we're working with what we've got. So here we're going to start chopping away. You want to cut any potato that's bigger than the size of a golf ball. So most of these are. And again, you want at least 2 eyes, but you also want the chunk of potato that you cut off to be at least 1.5 inches big. So you don't want to just cut out a little sliver. You can see there's 1, 2, 3 here. I'll probably cut like that. So this guy is ready to go, and we ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4 on there, and that's fine. And we're going to leave it cut side up so that this is going to dry and harden, and that's why we want to do this before planting. You don't want to just plant this freshly cut, moist potato right in the ground because it can increase the risk of disease. So we want to harden this off and create a good barrier. You can see the rest of this potato. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I am just going to cut this in half. Great, so we got 3 potato plants out of that 1 potato. And we'll just keep working through these. So I have 1, 2, it's kind of an art form to try and figure out how to save as much from it. I'm kind of a greedy gardener. I want to get as many potatoes as I can out of these. So I'm just cutting this one in half. Here's a smaller potato with a decent amount of eyes. This is about what we're looking for. We want the eyes to just start to sprout, but not be super long because those are just naturally going to break off when you plant them. But you do want some growth. You want them started a little bit so that they can just take off once they're in the ground. I'm gonna cut in half like that. Now this one's on the small side. It's a little bit bigger than a golf ball, but it only has 2 eyes. So I'm just gonna leave this whole. Okay, so that is it for the red chieftain potatoes. It's just the two of us, Ryan and I, so we're not a massive family to feed. And so I'm just gonna move these to the cardboard box. We can find a safer location in the shop. Hopefully there's less mice in the shop because we have 3 cats living in there. Okay, these are my fingerling potatoes. Same deal. These eyes are pretty small and the shop is warmer than this dry cabin. So I think that'll help these sprout a little bit. I would like to see these a little bit more sprouted before I plant them. Look at that color. Oh my gosh. I forgot that these are purple. That was a fun surprise. All right, let's head out to the shop. Well, hi. Are you gonna help protect my potatoes? You gonna do a good job? Maybe. My chicks have officially moved out into the brooder, so they're loving it out here. I'll be moving this brooder out to the coop probably next week. I like to keep a closer eye on them for the first week when they're still itty bitty babies. So I think this is where I'm going to put them. This is where I was storing my potatoes that are harvested all winter, so it's still kind of dirty, but there is no mouse poop. So let's see if this will just fit on its own. Hey, love that when that happens. Now, if your potatoes already have eyes growing on them, you definitely want to do this step carefully so you don't break them off. This is Mabel. She's my sweet little lovey. She's also a really good mouser. We have 2 other cats, but they're pretty shy. So I was seeing if maybe one of them would poke their head out so you can meet them too, but they are also good mousers. So we got pretty lucky with our 3 cats. And she's just so cute. I love a big fluff ball. Mwah. Right? Have you guys been up to no good? You are all muddy. You are all muddy. What you been doing? Where have you been? Been busy? So it's been a couple days and good news, the potatoes have sealed off. They're looking awesome and the weather held for today. So it did rain last night, so I think the soil is maybe a little damp, but I think it'll be good enough for us to get the potatoes in the ground. I want to plant carrots and I have a special surprise to show you in the garden before it all rains again for the next 4 days or so. Let's get started. So this is the exciting news. I did a little bit of planting last night. These are my cold tolerant plants, so I'm definitely not doing tomatoes or peppers or anything like that, but I'll turn around and give you a peek. So these in the back are my 4 Brussels sprouts. This is the north end of the garden, so I always do my tall stuff on the north sides. I do provide cages for the Brussels sprouts because they get quite big and they can lean over. Then over here I have chunks of broccoli. I space them 18 inches apart and my rows are 3 feet wide. So 2 per row seems to work pretty well. I left some spacing here because my companion planting flowers are going to be going here, but they're not quite ready to go out to the garden. I have 2 cauliflower. I'm personally not a big cauliflower fan, but Ryan loves it. So these are for Ryan. And then here is intermixed some bok choy and kohlrabi. These you can plant a lot closer. So I'm going for like a 6 to 9 inch spacing and they'll be out fast. So these guys are going to be harvested within the next month or so. And then over here are my cabbages. Those I space 18 inches apart. And then lastly is my Zucchini Savoy. And in the front here is still blank. I'll probably do some more companion planting flowers. I think a big chunk here I'm going to do bush beans. We'll see. If you saw some of my earlier YouTube videos with the garden prep, I did the garden clod and mixed in compost and my blood meal, which was my amendment based on my soil test. But potatoes are deep growers. They're gonna be buried down in there. The tubers are gonna be deep into the ground. So we need to do some deep lifting and loosening of my heavy clay soil. So I have my broad fork here, which is an awesome tool. I have a discount code for one if you would like to grab one. I highly recommend them. I'll link it in the description. So let's get to work. So the soil is still pretty wet, so it's gonna be heavy and it's very compacted, but it'll be worth it in the end. There's a rock down there. That's a lot of work. I definitely don't do that for my whole garden, just my deep-rooted plants. And of course we're doing carrots today too, so we'll have to do an next row for that. But potatoes for sure, carrots, but like bush beans and herbs, I don't bother to do it. It'd probably help, but I just only have so much strength left in me. So let's move on to the next phase. So next up, it's kind of a hot mess, so I like to clean it up a little bit and then we'll plant. Okay, we've made it to the fun part. We can actually get to planting. So potatoes, you want to space each one about 1 foot apart, and typically you just do 1 row, but I have an extra wide bed. My bed is 3 feet wide, so I've been doing 2 rows of potatoes. Where at my old homestead, it was a 2 foot wide bed, so I just did 1. And so I'm just gonna start setting them out. I like to make sure that everyone has the right space before I start digging them into the earth. And I just love to use a little yardstick. It's lightweight, cheap, and it works really well for measuring in long distances. If you just used a 1 foot ruler, oh, that'd be so annoying. So love this. In between my rows of potatoes, what am I doing? About 20 inches. That feels about right to me. We are gonna need room to hill them in a few weeks when the sprouts are up. So you don't want them too close, but you don't want them too far on the edge where you have no soil to hill up on the side. So this is feeling pretty good. Just keep working our way down. It's getting warm. It's finally starting to feel like spring. So I have 8 potatoes left. I've run out of room. So, and they're my fun purple tomatoes that I really wanted to grow. I don't have any extra room around here, so I need to go back to the drawing board on where I can squeeze these guys in. So I have my awesome gardening book. This is my favorite. This is what I learned from in the very beginning when I first started gardening in 2008, and it's still my very favorite book to this day. I'll link it in the description if you want to, but it tells me what plants are friends and foes with potatoes. As far as potatoes go, they're friends with bush beans, the cabbage family, corn, eggplant, marigold, parsnips, and peas. And I want to make sure to not plant them by cucumber, pumpkin, raspberry, rutabaga, the squash family, sunflower, tomatoes, and turnips. And thankfully, when I did some of my planting last night, I had an empty space that I thought I was going to do bush beans, and it's in that Brassica family that is A-OK according to the book, so let's just throw them over there. Since I thought I was going to plant bush beans here, I did not do any broad forking. Put you here and here. Glad I don't have a mic on. You can hear my heavy breathing from that broad fork. It is a good workout. And there we go. So the key when planting potatoes is you want to do sprout side up, because that is where the growth is going to come up. So don't put them in upside down. And I just like to use a trowel to plant them. And we're looking for a hole that's about 3 inches deep. I never measure, I just kind of eyeball it. Stick them in there, and that's it. Stick the trowel in there. Cover them up. Easy peasy. And we just go down the line. And the soil should be nice and loose by now. And that's a wrap for potatoes, my friends. Let's move on to carrots. We start the same way. Let's get that broad fork out. Carrots grow very deep, or at least that's what we're looking for. I want some big old carrots that aren't all wonky and everything. Because if your soil is compacted or you have a lot of rocks in there, the carrots are just gonna get all goofy looking. So we want some beautiful carrots. So we're gonna do the broad fork again. Okay, we're done with that for a while. Put that away. So the next step, you guessed it, we gotta pretty it up a little bit, and then we have a new step that you haven't seen yet. My next step is definitely not necessary, but something that I like to do. I love straight rows for carrots, so I'm gonna lay some string down so I know where to go. So the next step is adding some seed starting mix. I love to add it to where I'm gonna put the carrot seeds down because carrot seeds are really tiny and I have clumpy clay soil. So adding this to where I'm gonna be putting the seeds down is really gonna improve their chances of germinating. And if you've grown carrots before, you probably know that they can be a little bit tricky to get to germinate. Just about like that, and then just work it in a little bit. We don't need it super deep, just mostly on the surface. All right, so I got that step done. We're looking really good. And as far as spacing goes, I do my rows about a foot apart, so I can fit 3 rows here, which is great. And let's talk seeds. So I'm gonna be planting 2 different carrot varieties. So one is the Bengala F1 carrot, and the other is the Scarlet Nantes carrot. Maybe that's how you pronounce it. And I like to grow 2 different carrots because this is a 100-day carrot, so it's going to take a while to mature, but I love it because it matures right in the fall and is really good for storage. So this is what we'll be eating all winter long. Where this faster finishing carrot, 65 days, this one is going to be our fresh eating carrot for in the middle of the summer, which is going to be great. And so I'm going to take my setup here to my advantage and do my 100-day carrot here, and my 100-day carrot here, and my 65-day carrot here. That way, once I harvest this one, then these 2 are going to have plenty of space to get massive by the end of the season. Now these carrot seeds are tiny, so they can be pretty tricky to seed, but I just try not to overcomplicate it. And what I do, let me try and do this one-handed, balancing the camera on my knee. There we go. Is I just like to just grab them with my fingers and I just roll them, I guess, and just let them slowly fall out. And same thing with making the trench. I don't overcomplicate it. I just follow the string that we have and just kind of make a shallow trench, just like that. And then just rolling my fingers. I seed pretty thickly so you can see that they are scattered in there. Hopefully you can tell. I prefer to thin them afterwards, so I'm going to thin them to where there's 1 every 2 inches. Carrots can be kind of tricky to germinate, so may as well overseed and thin them out later. And then once you have a thickness that you like, I do my little karate chop method to press them in and then just close up your trench and pat them in place and bring your string back up. So the carrot seeds are in, the potatoes are in. It is really feeling like it is happening. The garden season is here. So I typically do have one more step, or I guess two more steps that I'm not doing tonight, and I'll tell you why. So step number one is watering in the seeds and watering in the potatoes. I'm not doing that right now because I don't have water out to my garden yet. We're still in early May, so it still could potentially freeze, so we don't have the hoses set up yet. And we're getting ready to set in for 4 days of rain. So I'm gonna let nature take care of that for me. And then step number two is I need to cover my carrot seeds because they take up to 3 weeks to germinate and they can dry out really quickly. They have to stay moist that entire germination period. If they dry out once, it could inhibit their ability to germinate, and that would be really sad. So there are a few different methods that you can use to mulch over your carrot seeds, and what I've done in previous years is use a fairly thin layer of organic straw, and that kind of worked. It did help keep the moisture in, but weeds became a major issue because it was thin enough so that the seedlings could still grow. They still need some light, right? But because it was so thin, the weeds grew as well. And carrot seedlings, they grow slow, they're delicate. It's really hard to get in there and weed. So that was ultimately not my favorite method. So this year, I'm gonna be laying down strips of thin wood, like plywood or cardboard. And I'll just leave that in place for until they've fully germinated and I'm seeing some green. So I think that's going to be a good method, but I need to wait before everything is fully watered in before I lay that down. But it was so fun to have you out in the garden tonight to get some of this stuff planted, and there is yet so much more to come. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss gardening season. I so appreciate you being here, and I'll catch you on the next video.